My name's Chris Eastabrook. I live up in North Wales on the banks of the River Dee, and I work as a full-time professional whitewater kayak coach, which means I spent all of my day on the river teaching people personal skills, kind of kayak-specific whitewater safety and rescue, and in the summer I take them on holiday with their boats, which is pretty good. What I wanted to talk about today really is, rather than talk about a specific trip that I've done, I wanted to kind of give you a bit of an insight into what whitewater kayaking is and what makes it adventurous. And that was Mexico, just to give the photos. Kayaking is basically a sport where you paddle down quite a fast-flowing river in quite a small boat, and all the power comes from you, and it can be quite exciting and quite dangerous at the same time. What makes it adventurous is often where you go somewhere there's not necessarily a guidebook or any detailed maps of the river. You're kind of launching into the unknown, much like this photo, and you don't really have to go far to achieve that. This photo is from North Wales, not far from where I live, and this was a new river that I did not that long ago, and it really kind of summed up for me that what you can have fun without actually going that far. When I look for a new trip, it's kind of, where do I look for my inspiration? Well, it's quite easy just to kind of open a mountaineering website or skiing magazine and look for where the mountains are. And I kind of look where are the mountains? Is there some water? And when those two go together, I often find me doing my sport, really. Often one of the most challenging parts of the trip is just getting to the country in the first place. And you can imagine the reaction of a check-in lady at an airport desk when you rock up with a trolley full of 3 kayaks. It kind of goes down well. The easiest plan is often just to hire a 4x4, tie the boats to the roof, drive to the river, and then get someone to pick you up at the end. The more exciting trips and perhaps more difficult trips is where you rely on public transport, and it's part of the transport then becomes part of the trip. And this is a cycle rickshaw in Nepal, as for an example, or maybe a trip to Turkey, where negotiating, haggling, and arguing your way onto the bus is often part of the experience, and you earn your respect points. And by far the coolest way that I've travelled with my boat is by helicopter in New Zealand, where it's just super remote, and the only way to get there is a £30 heli ride. And you definitely feel like a hero. It's like the coolest thing ever. So when you actually get to the river, you kind of get absorbed by the challenging and the technical nature of the white water, and it's kind of that pitting myself against nature is often the thing that drives me kind of fundamentally. And this was a rapid in Georgia, and I was the first person ever to paddle that rapid, so I took a bit of time, looked where I wanted to go, abseiled in, and then kind of done it. And what a photo like this doesn't show you while dropping 50 foot in Mexico in the middle of the jungle is the time that goes in before you run it. So you get out beforehand, have a careful scout, realise how scared you are, think about it a bit more, and then you do it. And it's only when you kind of safely get to the bottom at a calm spot, you kind of look up and go, wow, that was cool. And then your gaze then drifts downstream and you think, oh, I've got to do that again. And that kind of cycle carries on all day. And depending on how strong your nerves are is how long you can go doing that for, really. And the whitewater takes you to some amazing places. This example in Morocco, I had to slide on out of a lady's front room, like straight into the rapid and paddle through. And the village is based around this river with overhanging into the river, and so you get a really unique perspective. Similarly, this is in New Zealand, and you can only get to this gorge and get this view if you paddle in by kind of kayak or raft. You can't walk in, the tracks go around, there's obviously no roads, and so it gives you a really unique perspective on the landscape, which is really amazing. Whenever you go anywhere with a boat, you're instantly a magnet for people, and they'll kind of walk up to you and give your boat a bit of a kick and tap it, and then point at the river, and then look at you and shake their heads, and you nod, yeah, and they're like, no. And it kind of goes on like that a lot. And the people often give you kind of the best times. And these 2 girls are part of a massive family that I met in Georgia that live in the 11th century defense tower. And we just kind of finished paddling through their town, basically, and they invited us to a massive family party where we drank a lot of Georgian homemade moonshine, which was pretty exciting. And they just invited us in, and we had a great time. It was the best night of the trip. On a similar note, you often learn that kind of cliche about personal discovery and the people you paddle will go away with. You're putting a lot of trust into them, and you learn a lot about them as people when things go wrong. And that last photo was when we had 2 flat tires in 100 yards, and everyone's kind of nerves got a little bit frayed. And just driving in between the rivers, you end up having the most amazing adventures by accident. And this was a festival in Tibet I kind of accidentally walked into. Was adopted by a small family that fed me oranges and beer all afternoon, and it was great to absorb, and I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't have been travelling between 2 rivers. And it, it's a very simple form of life out in New Zealand on this trip, where we flew out, bought this truck, camped by the river every night, and boated every day, and kind of had 6 weeks of that. And one thing I always get asked on a talk is where you're going to next, and the kind of 3 or 4 good plans for this year. The highlight is going to be a first ascent expedition in Papua, Indonesia. So lots of virgin rainforest, helicopters, and I had my first nightmare about it last night, incidentally. So I'm quite